Dr. Talbot, you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, should we,
Do you want me to do attendance?
yeah, my customary process with these, do it at 2 after the timeline. Should we give everyone 2 minutes, or go ahead, John?
Sure, that's up to you. That's fine.
Maybe we can, do we need to do roll call for attendance, or do you want to just,
I can certainly do roll call, yes.
I don't think it's necessary unless, you know, I think everyone is on that's on, correct? Anyone on a number that we cannot see?
No, not currently.
Okay, and I know Dr. Glick was, he was gonna jump on here in a second, so.
Okay, well, we can give him a second here.
Yep. I think Dr. Osborne is on the phone. I know that FF Thompson has been, God said he didn't get home until about 4 in the morning.
Yeah, Dr. Osborne's actually on camera right there.
Yep.
It's been a while since we've seen each other, so you're forgetting that.
Yeah, okay. Thank
I think Dr. Osborne wins the award for best skeleton in the background.
I've pointed that out to him before, Jamie. I told him I need a new office.
This is what happens when you have quality issues at Thompson. They just hang you out and they starve you.
Okay,
Standing before an M&M committee.
Dr. Glick just joined us.
Okay, it's 9:02. Thanks for joining. Good morning, everyone. We'll call the March meeting of the Finger Lakes REMAC to order. January minutes were electronically distributed. As usually when I host a Zoom meeting, I will consider a motion to be approved by unanimous consent unless there is objection. If that is acceptable to everyone, but we would need a motion for approval of those minutes.
Motion to approve.
Any discussion or edits? And hearing no objections, those will be considered approved. So standing reports, program agency coordinator.
So our conference went off without a hitch at the end of February. Had to do some last minute scrambling for presenters because one of our main speakers who was doing 6 lectures had a family emergency 2 days before the conference that we had to scramble to fill lectures. But we were able to secure the additional lectures, and I think everybody had a great time. Attendance was a little bit low, but we were still around 65 people in attendance for the session. So we're still tabulating evaluations as far as what people thought, and then we'll start the planning process for next year. We have also teamed up with the Strong Memorial URMC pediatric tracheostomy team that deals with little kids with ventilators and such. And we are going to be hosting at the Ontario County Safety Training Center on March 30th. In the evening, I believe at 6:30, we'll be doing a CME session on the management of those type of patients. And they also are going to review the contents of what they call a go bag that has various supplies on how to manage those individuals. Believe it or not, we do have quite a few in our 4-county area. I know there's at least 2 here in the Geneva area. There's 3 or 4 in the Wayne County area, and then 1 in Yates County. So these folks are out there. So if we can better prepare our folks, I think we'll be in better shape.
They did, John, provide us with an updated list when they do have additional patients, correct?
Well, I mean, that's what we're hoping is going to happen. They did provide me with a list, a current list. And I'm hoping that as the additional folks are added to the list, that they will in turn advise us as well.
Great. Anything additional?
That is it for right now, sir.
Okay, Finger Lakes Community College Administrator Program Director.
She's not in the office yet, so you can bypass her.
Okay. Myself, you have the one individual on the investigation list, correct?
I do. It's a Lisa Stechnik, Steciak, from the Syracuse, New York area. There was a revocation 210 of 22 and assess a civil penalty of $5,000 for violations of 10 NYCRR Part 800.16A, 1, 2, and 3. So this individual was pretty naughty. And that's the lone enforcement that we have currently.
Okay. We don't know what that is, do we?
Ed Majors, I saw you somewhere on here. Do you have are you able to help narrow that down at all or no?
Good morning. I actually just tell me what the regulation or the violation was, and I can get it to you. But I don't know the particulars on that particular case.
It was 800.16 subset A 1, 2, and 3.
All right, come back to me.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So the CMAC received notification that the April meetings will take place. It will be a hybrid form in Albany and on some type of web platform. I believe John and Don are planning on physically attending, and so we'll report back in May, I guess. RSA committee.
Sorry, I had to get to my mute button there. So the RSI committee actually met yesterday. Let me turn this on. We're going to be moving forward. We're probably going to be meeting the day before REMAC to go over some things. I'll just be brief on our agenda. We talked about, we had some committees at our last meeting formed, best practice committee, which is the best practice for our, not only for the monitoring of the RSI providers, but also for the training. Dr. Syrett and Dr. Talbot, also Dr. Taylor are going to be working on that. We seem to have a pretty good handle on what we're going to do moving forward in terms of ongoing training. Also, we're working on process of notifications for providers that have their privileges, RSI privileges, either revocated or suspended. Also working on a documentation standard for RSI that's in the preliminary process. Myself, Jeremy Harris, Jason Haig, and Matt Tornator are working on that. Also, we are working on, and John, is it possible, I sent you that document. Is you can possibly show it or no?
Which one, Mike?
The reciprocity. Also, we've instructed the RSI agencies to update their current RSI providers. Hopefully, John, everyone has done that. I know I sent you mine like 10 minutes ago, sorry. Hopefully that'll have a database where we can work on showing these providers, and then if there are any suspensions or revocations, we can add or delete as needed.
Mike, just to touch on on the provider letters, I have only received yours and Wayne County's. I have not received anyone else's.
Okay. All right. So if you can't share the document, John, I'll just briefly touch on it.
I'm looking for it, Mike. I don't have it recently. And
it should be, I sent it with my providers at like 8 o'clock, but
okay.
It's okay if you can't share it. I can read it.
Yep, I got it right here.
Okay, great. So one of the ongoing questions we've had as an RSI committee is what do we do with the providers that are already RSI trained and RSI cleared in another region in New York State? Before we had zero tolerance policy is the best way to describe it, where everyone had to go through our RSI program. We were running into air medical providers who are had a lot of more training and a little bit more seasoned than a lot of the ground providers are in terms of the RSI process. So coming forward, I don't know if you can read that. So we decided to create a policy for reciprocity for an RSI provider. So there's two components to this policy. The first component would be an RSI provider from another New York State approved REMAC region. So if they're cleared, let's say in Melrose, they would come to our region, work for an RSI approved ground agency. These would be the steps they would take to become qualified to do RSI in this region. Basically, it's a letter of support from the RSI, from the current agency they're going to, as medical director and agency chief, and also proof of training. It gives the RSI medical director, Dr. Siret, and the RSI committee the opportunity to review and to add any necessary training needed, or to give the okay for that RSI agency to allow them to be qualified to be RSI. The second component would be for those who currently work in an air medical transport service. That's a little bit less qualifications needed. All we would need from that is a letter from the air medical service training director and the medical director, just outlining the training they have gone through. They would also still need to go through and be approved by my committee, our committee, and RSI medical director. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to take it. If not, I'm looking for a motion for the REMAC doctors to approve this policy for the RSI program in the Finger Lakes region.
Yeah, you don't need a motion, Mike, because it's already a committee motion. So
okay,
you don't need a second. It just goes straight to the REMAC as a committee motion.
Okay, well, I'm looking for the REMAC doctors to vote on this, to allow this to be part of our program.
And just to clarify what Mike's saying, this was really part of the process anyway. We've been grandfathering in air medical providers on a case-by-case basis. This is just putting it on paper and expanding it to experienced ground providers as well. So no one on the committee had any issues with this.
So John, should we take a roll call vote?
I think just all in favor, unless there's any opposition to it, is sufficient.
So it's been brought forward by committee and considered seconded. Is any discussion or objections? Policy will be approved by unanimous consent.
Thank you. Our next meeting will be May 16th at noon. Hopefully by then we will have the documentation and possibly the best practices portion of this completed and ready for REMAC approval in May. That's all I have, John. Thank you.
Hey, John, do you want to do the King Airway thing just now?
Certainly, we can do that.
Yeah, I did. It's just because it came up as part of the RSI committee. There was a separate discussion by the RSI committee about whether how much responsibility we have for general airway management. And it was the feeling that given this group is essentially responsible for airway management, if we came across stuff that we thought would help the region, we would just deal with it at our committee level rather than making a formal referral over to quality, to Scott's quality committee. There was 2 cases that have come across the desk that involve failed King Airways. One of them involved a King Airway piercing the posterior pharynx of a patient and then causing massive subcutaneous emphysema. The patient subsequently died. There was a second case where a King airway was inserted and folded over on itself, obstructing the airway of the patient. Both patients, these King airway failures were identified at postmortem. What happened was I took those cases and referred it to a national group of medical directors that I'm part of, that kind of do interagency quality recommendations. And I put the cases up for review. And there's about 40 medical directors on this group. And within probably 3 hours, I got 27 responses. And they were unanimous in saying, what the hell are you using King Airways for? You need to get rid of these things and go to iGels. This is apparently recognized complications of King Airways that I was not immediately aware of. Overwhelmingly, the feeling of the group was that King Airways have a higher failure rate and can cause more destruction in the airway. And so I then went to the literature, reviewed the literature, and that's supported by the literature. At the agencies that I'm responsible for, we are transitioning to iGels as soon as we can. They're actually very slightly cheaper than King Airways, which makes the directors of operation happy. But there's a lower complication rate, and it is by far the most recommended supraglottic airway. So we kind of felt that this was important information to share with the other medical directors at REMAC, and it was the feeling of the committee that it would be our recommendation that all agencies have their medical directors consider if they want to continue using King Airways with this new knowledge. We're not making it mandatory. We're not telling agencies how to do their job. We're just making it a very strong recommendation from the RSI committee based on real cases that we're dealing with, that agencies should reconsider their use of King and consider moving to the iGel supraglottic airway. If people want specifics, they can certainly contact me directly. But this was something that was new information to me. I suspect it's going to be new information to some of the other medical directors and directors of operation. And I can't stress enough that you really need to look at this. And so our RSI committee is just making a recommendation to the REMAC that agencies consider moving from King Airway to iGel airway for supraglottic airway devices.
Yeah, and Dr. Talbot, we would like to handle that in a REMAC advisory, and we'll send that out to the folks if the doctors are all in agreement.
Any additional discussion from the group?
I know I don't really count in the group, but did the iGel manufacturer remove the requirement for placing an OG tube with each use?
Yeah, the EMS practice is not to hang on. The EMS practice is not to place the OG tube. They're going with straight supraglottic eye gel. It comes as a kit now.
There's, as far as easy use of these, there's currently a pilot project for iGel placement by BLS, awaiting approval from the Commissioner of Health. And it's practice for the BLS level of care in multiple other states across the country. So my feeling is if it could be used by BLS providers, there's absolutely no reason that it shouldn't be a first line supraglottic for our advanced providers. So like Dr. Surratt said, I think literature's out there that supports it, and I think the field experience is out there that supports this as well.
And actually, it was a little scary when I looked at the literature, but some studies report as high as a 10% unrecognized failure rate from a King airway, which kind of was shocking. It has a much higher failure rate than the other supraglottic airways, LMAs and iGels. So, we wanted to put the best evidence into practice. It may change in the future, but the current and the other thing is, it was the overwhelming. There was not one person in that group, and these are large EMS systems with large volume. LA County, Seattle, Nashville, Wake County. These are big EMS systems with large volumes and a lot of experience with these airways, and it was unanimous that that we should not be using the King. So I held off. I feel that the information is important to have. I think it's a good advisory that there is a higher complication rate with Kings that needs to be recognized. I'm not telling agencies not to do it, but the med directors really need to look at the information, make their own decisions at their own agencies, and it's cheaper. So there's no financial argument. So that at Wayne County, Macedon Town, are my two airway RSI airway agencies. We're going to iGel, and we're dropping Kings, and that we're starting the transition now.
Great, thanks, Jamie. John, so we'll get together and get that advisory and get that out to the region.
Sure thing.
Any report from the newly formed BLS committee? No report, I don't believe.
There is none.
And none from the Advanced Practice Committee. New York State Bureau of EMS.
Good morning.
Go ahead, Ed.
Good morning, Brian. I'll talk first if you don't mind, and I'll turn it over to Brian. But just to follow up on your 816, 1, 2, and 3, Section A. One is that they violated something in 815, which is sort of scope of practice or standards of care protocol. 816, 2 has been negligent in EMS duties, and 3 has been incompetent in the performance of EMS duties. So those are the violations that were asked about just a brief time ago. Just a couple things that I wanted to talk about before Brian gives his report. The good news portion is that as everybody knows by now, the Bureau has issued a 1-year certification extension for field providers. It does not include instructor certifications. So the instructor certifications for CLI and CIC did not get extended, only field providers. So just keep that in mind. And one common question that we're getting regarding the extension is, since you technically would have been eligible for the first extension and the second extension, you'll have roughly a 60-month period of certification based on the two extensions. So if you're in the CME program, your CME hours or certificates basically can go back 48 months for your next recertification submission. So there's also some little glitches in people put in CME. They will get if your CME application is currently in queue, you will get the 1-year extension on top of the recertification packet. So I think that covers the majority of those questions. I think some of the folks that were in refreshers, the recommendation is that they may want to wait until the 39-month period before they test. There's advantages and disadvantages to that, also related to retention of information and materials and test preparation. So just keep that in mind. Only other thing I wanted to mention is for the hospital systems, the National Ambulance Contract, the resources are back in play. We do have 20 ambulances basically staged between the upstate region. Those resources are back for a period of 2 weeks. We also have some in-state resources, which is much less. I think there's 9 or 10 of those. Those are split between the upstate area also that are available for interfacility transfers. We've really tightened down on verification that the local resources have been contacted to ensure that local resources are being used over the National Ambulance Contract resources. But those resources, again, will be here for 2 weeks. And then the in-state resources will remain until the end of the month. And then we believe that everything should be demobilized by the end of this month. So if there's any questions on that, let me know. Brian, go ahead. Thank you very much for your time.
Well, he pretty much covered everything I was going to cover, other than the fact that I just wanted to remind everyone that Lynn Ferrugia, our chief financial person, is no longer with the Bureau of EMS. She's took a position in a different part of the Department of Health. And also our executive regional medical director, Dr. Young, is retiring and will no longer be around. He was, in the past, has always been very EMS friendly, and he should be at the SEMSCO meetings coming up. But other than that, he'll be retiring also. So that is all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Brian, can you just touch on the recent move for BLSFRs and the requirements that need to be met?
As far as just in general, or something specific?
Well, in general, I mean, now they have to designate one registered vehicle and that type of requirement.
Sure. So currently, there really hasn't been other than kind of refresh your information every 3 years, a requirement for BLSFRs kind of to participate or to regulate. So one of the things that we've been doing is there's 2201 policy statement, which basically allows them to use the CME recertification program with their membership, which they weren't currently previously able to do. If they do electronic charting and they kind of follow the rest of the rules for the BLSFR agencies. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in 2201 that I haven't covered. It's mostly revolves around EPCR's compliancy with that, having a vehicle that's certified or registered. Ed, anything else?
I think the only thing to just focus on is there's a little bit of confusion that does, the BLSFRs are to register a vehicle with the Bureau if they are participating in the CME program. We certainly would encourage any entity to, that's eligible for BLS first response to register with us and to be compliant with the BLSFR information and, basically provide us, a registered vehicle. Fire departments, they're getting hung up a little bit on the registration of the vehicle. We understand that a fire department vehicle does not have to be registered with DMV. It does ask for a plate number. We would just encourage the agencies to enter a unit ID number in there, and that'll get them past that particular process. But there's a Drupal form that they have to submit the sort of pictures of 3 sides of the vehicle. We do send out a confirmation certification, and it's a yellow sticker that'll be on the windshield for those vehicles. And BLS first response agencies have until July 1st of this year to register to continue to be eligible for the CME program. So a lot of entities also sort of had lapsed in their updates. So they've registered a vehicle. Then we are reaching out to them to say, hey, look, we need the additional information such as your agency roster, a BLS first response update, and your current PAD agreement. If you have not supplied those within the last 3 years, we're moving that to a 2-year renewal process. So that information is clearly outlined in the policy statement. But I think that covers everything, Brian. Thank you.
Do you have a current list of everyone that's met the requirements and those that still need to meet them?
John, did I sent you? Did you get the previous email that I sent that had who had currently registered and who had gaps in basically we can't issue the registration if they're they're expired. So we did send that information out, and Joe Farrell's been communicating, but we can certainly give you a list if you'd like.
I do not recall seeing that, Ed. So if that's possible to get that again.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. And I may not have sent it to you. I may not have had enough coffee that day. So other than that, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
just a quick question on that. So is this, just to clarify, is this for specific BLS first response units, or is this for anything that responds with a BLS provider that can provide care? So is it like every fire truck?
No, Dr. Surratt, if you have a BLS first response agency code, the Bureau and we don't have, it's not in statute, right? So it's basically what the Bureau said was, if you want to have eligibility for funding and participate in the CME program, then you're going to have to register at least one vehicle with us. It doesn't mean that you can't register all of your vehicles, but it does, you have to put in a check sheet that shows that you're compliant with the 826 requirements as to what the minimum equipment standards are for a BLS first response, which is actually the same as an EASV for the ambulance side. So we make them upload a check sheet that they self-inspected the vehicle, pictures of the vehicle, and basically a picture of the license plate if there is one, and just some basic information. So that's it. But if they want to participate in the CMA program, they have to register a vehicle, at least one, by July 1st.
So any fire service that has some form of BLS coverage on their rig should be registered in some shape or form as a BLS first response agency?
Well, Jamie, it's not necessarily required in statute. So what we're saying is, if you're a BLS first response agency and you want to participate in the CME program, then it's mandatory that you register at least one vehicle, or we'll drop you from the program. We do have, the BLS first response system is sort of unique in a sense that it's not a regulatory requirement to register or certify with the department because it's not in regulations. So we do have entities that do not have New York State agency codes that are, it's a fire department that does respond to some EMS related calls, but they don't have an EMS agency code. Our objective is to certainly get them to apply, to give us standardization information, contact information, their minimum standards as far as equipment and stuff like that. So if they are in the CME program, that's our way of saying you have to register in order to maintain your agency code and to be eligible for state funding.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Brian. Moving along, Mercy Flight Central.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Emily. I'm the new outreach coordinator. I was at the conference this weekend. I got to meet a lot of you, but I haven't met all of you. We do have a couple upcoming CME education opportunities. March 23rd, we have a webinar. So that one you can do just from your house, and that's going to be 3 CME credits. We're going over 3 topics. We're doing C-long helmet ventilation, pediatric tracheostomies, and then hazmat. You can register through the links on our social medias, or you can get a hold of me, and I will send you all the information to get to that. Then on May 13th, we also have an EMS in-person education day, hopefully, at Casa Larga. More information on the topics for that to come. And then we also, on April 2nd, we have a blood drive coming up at our Canandaigua base. If any of you are free and want to donate blood because they are so in need of it, that would be greatly appreciated. That's in memory of Scott Reese, so that's a good cause for sure. And then we are also starting to plan spring and summer ground schools. So if anybody's interested in that or know anyone that's interested in that, feel free to send them my way. Other than that, I think we're all set unless Aaron has anything.
Nope, I'm all set. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. LifeNet, Guthrie.
Yes, good morning. Happy to announce that all of our New York State bases now are carrying blood products with a minimum of 2 pack cells and plasma. And from the local perspective, at least, it's very reassuring and encouraging to know that any blood that we have that is 1 week from expiration from the Seneca Falls base is being reallocated to the Geneva General Hospital. So the blood that we get, we keep in the region until it's used or expired. Good news for everybody. And also to add to that, we also have taken delivery of almost all of our new aircraft in the entire region. And if anybody needs a new ground school or re-education on safety zone landing, let us know, reach out, be happy to help. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I'll just go through the ground agencies. I'll take the liberty. Al, did you want to go ahead and I know you have another meeting to attend, discuss in the agenda the new business that you had forwarded last evening. And John, I emailed that to you. I don't know if you can share that.
Do we just want to email it to the group and they can review it for next time?
Can do that as well.
Why don't you throw it up on the screen just for quick discussion? If you can, John.
Yep, give me a second.
Well, John's pulling that up. Finger Lakes is seeing a huge increase of multiple or mutual aid calls were given to other agencies. Great example this morning, a call went out to a local agency at 8:30. It came in as a medical alarm. They acknowledged waiting on a driver. It was 8 minutes later, they did a second activation. During that time, a second call came in their district. Nobody's answering up for the first, and it was about 20 minutes for us to get on scene of the first call, which turned out to be a cardiac related call. And then the second call was a BLS call, and it took us almost 30 minutes to get there. We'd like to propose some consistency and some definitions of what an in-service ambulance is and isn't, and try to stop these long lag times from being dispatched. Central New York EMS has been doing this for probably 17 years. It works very well. The 911 centers knows who's available. They can start a mutual aid agency immediately if they aren't in service. And of course, if the home agency does answer up, they can take the call depending on how close the units are. I included, paramedic, critical care, EMT, AEMT's basic life support in it. I know we all don't recognize that. I think that's also something that should be reconsidered in the region, seeing our shortage of personnel. AEMTs are important, especially if you have no other ALS around. At least they can offer more than just a BLS agency can.
And that's basically it. That 23% mutual aid we're doing is of our total call volume, and no other agencies, with exception of Canandaigua, does transfers. So that's a big chunk of change. As far as us providing support to other agencies. I think this will give us an opportunity to measure, what services need some assistance. And if we can help them through it, or start an avenue so we can start measuring how effective our system is regionally. I know for years we've had shared services where one agency would send a driver and another agency would send a rig with an EMT or paramedic to combine and make one ambulance. I think this causes a lot of problems, and it's very difficult to measure to see how we're doing overall and to address the needs. I know Wayne County did a Finch study, and that was one of the things they discussed. I know Ontario's looking to address some issues on their fire and EMS study. But I really think, being that the region is responsible for establishment of triage treatment and transport protocols, this would fit in nicely. That's it.
Thanks, Al. So this is a brand new document, correct?
So yes, this was basically taken from Central New York's region.
Okay.
They monitor it. How it works down there is if an ambulance service isn't considered in service with 911, they get a notification that there's a call in their district, and the next mutual aid is started automatically. You got to remember, mutual aid's coming from distances. In our first response area, that could be 30 minutes for us in some cases. If we're doing calls in other areas, and our other neighbor is out of service and we get a call, we're picking up that slack, we're basically just chasing ambulances across the county. In some cases, we're passing each other going to these calls. I think this would be a good way to put everybody on the same page and basically start a standard for a system that we really need to look at and take care of. We have some significant challenges in the near future coming, and I think this helps outline the beginning of it.
Okay, so John, the next step, and I'm happy to hear other recommendations, would be to get this out to the entire REMAC to review, and then where would be the most appropriate forum to continue discussion?
Well, we can, just simply start an email chain for discussion, but it needs to go out for comment so all the docs can look at it. All the agencies can take time and look at it and read it and digest it.
Okay.
So I have a comment and a warning. This may not fall under the umbrella of what REMAC's actually responsible for. We've been doing this, we've been fighting this, and we've been trying to define it in Wayne County for the last 5 to 10 years. And it is a huge swamp because you have a 911 center that's federally mandated, that has certain protocols. You have agencies that have certificates of need. You have mutual aid versus CON holders. And every step of the way, you get resistance from everyone, everywhere. And I understand what Finger Lakes is pushing here, and I've tried to push it myself. But it is a swamp that we're not going to be able to backdoor mandate. We have no authority. At the REMAC, we're responsible essentially for ALS care and coordination. And this is dispatch, this is federal stuff, this is regional stuff, this is county stuff, and this is interagency politics. That's why you have EMS coordinators, and and people, to be honest with you, people change their opinions every other week on this. We tried to define what an in-service agency was, and we got so much pushback from it, it just became a quagmire of a battle. So I would caution the REMAC at getting into this. It's definitely needed, but I think that there may be other forums. It is certainly not a medical forum, and it is certainly not a medical director forum. This is a county, state, and federal issue.
If I could comment real quick, I believe we've received a lot of pushback. We've tried numerous times to get some sort of status board for at least Ontario County, if not the region. And we've gotten a lot of pushback from it. We've also had issues trying to status the ambulances with the 911 center, and we've gotten a lot of issues with that. I think this is a good idea. I just think that there's a lot of pushback, and I believe we had to go to the full council, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's where a lot of this was discussed.
My impression is this would go to the REMAC. The REMAC would either say, yes, this is the direction we like to go, and then it would go to the full council for approval. I think that, Ed, I know you know that other agencies do this or other regions do this. I do think it's in the scope of the REMAC. It's outlined in public health law. Basically the REMAC and the REMSCO are responsible for the establishment. I don't see that anywhere else, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I talked to attorneys on this, in statute across the board for towns or anybody else to do this. I think the problem is this is a hard topic to swallow. It's definitely the right thing to do as far as patient care is done, and we need to start building a standard. Has this ever been floated through the region's attorney to see if this is possible? Because we keep hearing the region has no authority, the region has no authority, but on other projects we work and we move forward on as a region. So I think unfortunately, guys, it's going to be some hard times making some hard decisions, but I think we really need to get back on our focus of what's best for patient care. The CADs in our area, the 911 centers, are very able to do this. So perhaps it's, the region recommends this to the counties and go that direction. But something's got to change.
Al, do you know the forum in which this was implemented in other regions? Do you know if it did go through the REMAC for recommendation, or how authoritative the REMAC's recommendation was?
So this was signed off by the regional medical director, went to the committee, and they had discussions on it, but ultimately they focused on what's best in response and for patient care. So everybody moved forward. Ultimately, as Dr. Surratt says, I don't think there's really a clear outline on who can do what in each licensed area. And I think people are just making up their own rules. I think the region is ultimately responsible for the care that's delivered to our patients.
We in Wayne County, we did institute a status board. We were able to, I believe we were able to extend the MILREM system to use it in Wayne County as well. We tried to mandate ambulance services, and some agencies do use the status board and some people don't. We were never able to get away from dropping tones, like passing over a home agency that has a certificate of need. And we always had to drop their tones. The only thing that maybe it did was send a second CON holder or mutual aid in the direction of. But this is something that it was dealt with really at the. I mean, Al, you and your predecessors were involved in this system, forming the system in Wayne County. It was done at the EMS advisory committee for the county. The EMS coordinator the EMS coordinator's job is to coordinate EMS resources in the area. And then it was done essentially under the federal mandate that the 911 center will dispatch the closest, most appropriate resource, and is not actually held to any CON process, although the state would like them to follow the CON process. But it is a tall order to dump this on the REMAC and solve this problem when it's not been solved in the last 10 years. by any and every other resource and people that are doing it every day. We came to a solution in Wayne County that kind of works for us, but the result of the fish study was we can't coordinate all these agencies with so many agencies, and ultimately we need a single coordinating service that, you know, and probably the 911 center is the best people to do that. I can't tell you how much CON issues we have with it, and it's a fight every day. Every day I get calls and complaints about how one agency was dispatched over another and how they forgot to sign on, or how they monitor at home and they don't want to sign on and then they jump calls when it's a cold call. It's just like an endless stream of phone calls. And there's no enforceability to it. You just can't, there's no bite to it. There's no policing. You know, you can legislate as much as you want and you can call it as much as you want, but there's no enforcement part to it.
So is that the same thing as far as, to me, it's a triage protocol. You know, you're getting this out. You are coordinating EMS. I have not found, and if you can point me to the direction where the EMS coordinator has that legal responsibility, I'd love to see it. We reviewed that discussions. Most of the stuff that I found in the past, not in the Finger Lakes area, but EMS was honestly, for a long time in Onondaga County, put under the sanitation law. So I think the REMAC, in all honesty, is the one that should be getting involved in these discussions and putting their recommendations out, because the REMAC does set our standards of care. And this is about providing care.
I know that in Wayne County, one of the roles of the EMS coordinator, as designated by the county, is to coordinate EMS care. I mean, maybe there should be 4 EMS coordinators. Maybe they can tell us what their feelings are on this.
Well, I think Bill's on now. Bill, you got any comments about this?
I think the things that Jamie has said are probably the strongest comments that could be made. Getting the cooperation has been next to almost impossible. Some agencies have signed on, some use it quite regularly. There is a lot of confusion when it comes to getting dispatches out appropriately, and we've had a lot of resistance. There has been some improvement, but we still have a long way to go, and I'm not exactly sure how we will be able to get the agencies to buy into following this plan.
I don't think necessarily.
I think some of the solutions to this may be in part after the state budget, the governor's proposed budget. It includes metrics that agencies need to follow and meet that need to be reported to the Department of Health, to the Bureau. Now, who knows if that's going to pass or not? But it was refreshing in my mind to see that in the governor's proposed executive budget, there's actually some proposal for some oversight and some control over this whole issue that we're discussing. That's not just at a regional level. It's a state problem. I chair a committee at the state level that looks at this. There's a whole EMS innovations tag that looks at this problem. Nobody has all the answers, and we're certainly not going to solve it even at a regional level today. But there needs to be, something's got to change. We can't keep doing it the way that we've been doing it for 30 years. The system's extremely broken. You know, the question is, do we start a group at the regional level, or do we wait to see what happens with Part F in the budget and pick up our bootstraps then after that dust settles? I think that's the question.
Jeff
Harlan. Brian and Ed, are they familiar with this? Is this a regional issue? I mean, you're our state representatives. I'll put you on the spot.
No, it's a statewide issue. It really is. It's not just your region, to answer that question.
does the region have that authority? I think that's what I'm looking for. I mean, this region is honestly, this question's been going on and on and on. What is the authority of the REMAC in the region? I mean, you want them to be responsible for a system, and in all honesty, the Finger Lakes region does not really have a system. Sorry, Brian.
No, it's okay. It's just complicated because ultimately there is nothing in legislation that says that like the county is responsible, or you know, it pretty much cascades down to the, you know, the most local form of government, whether it be village, town, or whatever that entity is, to you know, provide or EMS coverage. There are some municipalities, and I mean, you guys have experienced this, that you know, that are municipal agencies that provide coverage, and then there are other towns that have contracts, tax districts, okay, and all of that comes into play. And Wayne County ALS kind of has talked about this in your meetings in the past, that, you know, that they're paying county taxes and therefore are entitled to county resources. So, you know, there's lots of outside factors besides, you know, ultimately, you know, financial factors that come into play into this. And the CLN laws, the way they're written now, don't really currently help that situation.
You can't even legislate if a call is coded as ALS at the 911 center that an agency sends an ALS unit. It's their decision to follow the recommendation even. I mean, we spend all day coding these calls using EMD, and at the end of the day, the recommendation is for ALS, but it doesn't have to be followed by the home agency. They can kind of do whatever they want. The people have deferred to it, but this is like a huge issue that is a lot of work to place on the REMAC when there's not a lot of resources to address it.
So I guess I'm going back to the question. What, to me, it's pretty clear, public health law, the authority of the REMAC and the REMSCO, which outlines to coordinate all this stuff. So I'm hearing it could be multiple levels, and I know it's complicated, but in all honesty, isn't this the group we want to basically outline our regional system? And if other regions are doing this, and they've been doing it for years, it's doable, it's possible. Why can't we get there?
So my recommendation, and you know, happy to hear other comments, would be that given this is new to the group, and given that at least myself and I would feel confident that some of the other medical directors would need additional information from perhaps the you know, from our attorney, maybe from the way this was implemented in other regions. Can we would it be acceptable, Al, to review this for the physicians to review, maybe to have you know, talk offline with, you know, John with some of the logistics, and then bring this back at the May meeting?
Absolutely. That was the whole purpose of this, is to get out there, have some discussions, and see how we can fix the problem.
Okay. Does that sound acceptable? Any objections? Okay, thanks, Al. Moving on, we'll continue. Any other agencies on the call?
Kevin, do you want to go over the submission that John Hanson sent me?
John's right here, and he'll speak to that right now.
Okay.
Hey, we just figured we'd come on as one person. So in your emails, I submitted to Van Acker for REMAC approval for us to start carrying gastric tubes. We have a letter of endorsement from our medical director, Dr. Talbot, and LifeNet, Mr. Tatlock has agreed to do our initial training so that we can have this tool available to us. With our large district and sometimes weather causing delayed responses for us, we have first responders on scene. And as we all know, gastric decompression can improve patients that have had prolonged BVM ventilations. And it was something we felt would be beneficial to the people of our district. In review of this, I found out that both Wayne County and Victor both are already practicing this. So I could probably look to them if we had other further questions. But it was something that we felt would be a low cost but good impact to our patients of our district.
Their letter of support and protocol was just emailed out probably about 10 minutes ago.
So John, does this require a motion that I don't think I should make, obviously?
Yeah, it should have a motion of supporting the policy. It's already in the collaborative protocols and it's already a practice being used throughout the region. We just are looking for the support of the REMAC to allow them to do that.
A motion to support.
What's the motion? Just what's the wording of it, so I know what I'm voting on.
John, do you want to?
So just to surmise, the motion would be to allow North Central Ambulance to train and equip themselves with the nasogastric tubes and to begin the usage of it as per the collaborative protocols and with the support of their medical director.
John, I think that this has already been, it was already approved by REMAC years ago, because I remember Jamie Callard and me doing the training program for it.
Yeah, it's already approved statewide. We just look to have the support of the REMAC as well as the medical director before they jump into it.
We're already doing it. I didn't know we needed support from the REMAC to do it.
The reason we brought the proposal forward is in discussion with Mr. Van Acker in reviewing the statewide collaborative protocols. It says you can perform it with regional approval. And we felt through that in the wording of the collaborative protocol to cover our bases and to be, the REMAC is the most appropriate for this venue. And that's why we brought it forward.
Yeah, John, I think what Dr. Syret is saying is that it already has regional approval. So the question really is that are we going to require agency by agency approval?
I would just defer to the medical directors of the individual agencies to be responsible for the training and implementation.
I think it's more that the region decides.
Would it be more appropriate, Dr. Talbot, for agencies that?
I'm sorry.
Would it be more appropriate to just, since this has been regionally approved already, to just have agencies advise the REMAC that they're implementing NG usage? Would that be a more appropriate practice, maybe?
With the verbiage of appropriate training and QA, I would support that.
Yeah, maintaining the quality assurance at the agency level and not under the not the responsibility of the REMAC.
Acceptable to me, John.
That's fine with me.
I feel bad because we already have that capability at Wayne County. We've been doing it. We didn't realize that there was even a need for it, for regional approval. We thought it had already been approved because we already did a training program for it.
Okay, I think we can move forward unless there's further discussion. All right, any other ground agencies with reports? Thompson Health.
Good morning. So really only two things to talk about from us. One, we've had a change in our staff, primarily from the nursing leadership perspective. Krista Sokolowski has left to do some outpatient cardiology management through the University of Rochester. The good news is that we had in place already a qualified replacement. Stephanie Wynn is our new director of emergency nursing. She's been here for a couple of years, working as a nighttime nurse supervisor in the emergency department, or a nurse leader in the emergency department. So she comes with a wealth of experience. She's worked at Columbia Presbyterian, et cetera. So again, not an unfamiliar face, but pleased to have her in her new role. The second thing was really kind of more an apology or a statement of like what our current state is here at Thompson. As most of you know, we are currently on diversion. I feel like I've said unprecedented too many times over the last 2 years, but for instance, in a 24-bed emergency department, having 53 patients, of which 25 were hospitalized, created a real patient safety risk. And we understand the burden that this puts on all of our regional EMS agencies and other health systems. So we don't make these requests to the state lightly. We're going to reevaluate the situation in a couple of hours. And this, as opposed to COVID causing this surge, this is clearly related to two things. One is long-term care, many stable patients in the hospital awaiting placement in a long-term care facility, but also staffing. We are the first time we were previously able to surge from our 90 beds to 112, and we can't accommodate that. And in fact, have had to close down some available geographical beds, that is. We are working to do load rebalancing with hospitals like Noyes and Highland. But of course, that will likewise put some additional burden on the EMS agency. So we're doing everything we can to work through it. And again, apologize and appreciate your patience. And feel free to let me have it.
Can I have my first go then? I just no. So one thing that I think would help the EMS providers understand is at what point you flick over to going on diversion. Like some places it seem have two borders. They go on diversion and you go in there, there's empty beds, there's people sitting around having coffee. But like, what's the threshold? Like, I mean, is this like the shit has hit the fan, it has spread everywhere and like you're at breaking point, or do you give yourself any leeway at all? Because, I think EMS providers need to know if Thompson goes on diversion, this is like the end of World War III type thing versus like, to give some idea of how critical it is to pay attention to it would probably help. Because I mean, they hear about patients in the ER, but I think trying to, we've got people coming from Wayne County. If they go down to Thompson, they find out about it 10 minutes before they get there. And then they're like, shit, now I got to go all the way back to another hospital. But I think people also need to know, listen, if we're on diversion, this is really, 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 really bad. Like people are going to die if you come here idea.
Yeah, so it's World War III. I mean, we consider it to be a nuclear option. I've been here over 12 years now, and until November of last year, we had never gone on diversion. As an example, last night at 8 o'clock, when we initially went on a 4-hour diversion, that's when we had 53 patients in the emergency department, 25 boarders, 2 of them ICU boarders. Our 12-bed ICU was full to capacity. That's why we're boarding 2 in the emergency department. And it was a very real risk of someone coding in our waiting room. We simply could not get to our patients quickly enough. And again, we don't undertake it lightly, and our goal is to come off it as soon as possible. But it was an unworkable situation.
Matt, if I could, so I went into work last night without laryngitis. I left work with laryngitis. I was supposed to work till 2 a.m. at Thompson, and I left at 4. When I went in, they were trying to do everything they could to not go on diversion, excuse me, to try and handle as was, and it was a little frustrating. But we always try to, stick it out as long as we can. When we finally did go on diversion, like Matt had said, we had 54 patients, we had 22 boarders, and we had actually opened up another basically area of just hallways. And I walked in, everything was just lined with beds and hallways. And the limiting factor came last night when we literally didn't have any more gurneys left. There were no beds. We had patients with chest pains, excuse me, chairs on telly, sitting in hallways. It was, so it was pretty rough. So. But
Matt,
I know we've all had it rough.
So just for people coming from Wayne County, how do you get the information out to Wayne County? Do you just call the 911 centers and hope it's communicated, or is there, how is that information blasted out?
It's through the 911 center. I just saw it this morning. We haven't seen them in a while, but John is also pretty good about updating current diversion status as well via email. Is there a preferred way or a better way to? It's not always possible to call every EMS agency, but typically,
I mean, the only thing that you may want to investigate is, I know that a lot of our providers use a break system, which is on their cell phone, and it can take alerts. I don't know if we can. That might be an option, that you can actually talk direct to the providers that are logged on. I don't know if
that would be something that would have to come from the 911 center.
Okay, it has to go from there.
Another thing that you could do is this body could encourage agency chiefs to sign up to New York State to get the emails for diversion. I did not receive any notification from the 911 center. I got it right from the state, and put the onus on the agency leaders to distribute this to their personnel.
Yeah, I can tell you that it didn't come from Ontario County. I got notified by Yates County and Canandaigua specifically.
I mean, it's probably worthwhile trying to figure out a system where we can just get the information to the providers, because I know in Wayne County, we need that information early, because if we're coming to Thompson, we're already 30, 40 minutes on a transport by the time we get turned around in the parking lot, and like there's got to be a better way, because I got the information through John's email, but I'm not sure the information is, like, I'm not sure that the 911 centers are blasting out the information either to the providers, and we need to kind of follow it back through the process to see how this information's getting out, because my suspicion is if ambulances are showing up, they're just not getting the information in a timely fashion. They just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if
I
there,
know-
I know I'm just highlighting a problem that you may be experiencing it. You just don't realize that that's what's might be behind it potentially, because the information about diversion is sporadic and not well distributed.
Yeah, and I think
before
someone is, attentive to those emails, maybe they're not attentive, for the 4 hours of diversion. And so I'm not sure, other than direct communication with the agencies, if there's, unless somebody else knows of a way to communicate that real time.
So even if the 911 centers, send the message out, unless they're putting it on, paging all county, pagers, I don't know if the message would make it to like volunteer agencies that are coming from home. So if they just announce it on the air, but don't set tones for each agency. But I guess that's really up to the 911 center, how they will get their message out. We could easily put the, phone numbers for each of the 911 centers for each of the counties, dispatch centers, by our, to our administrators or by our triage desk, so that when we, when a hospital does go on diversion, we can call, each of the, the 4 centers. But then how they get it out, we can't control.
And
this is
by voice.
Every 911 center does have a medical, or should have a medical director. They're meant to have a medical director, and it might be worthwhile speaking to them so that they can get a system, because those med directors actually have quite a little bit of freedom in the 911 center to say how they want it done. And I want to not cause this problem. I don't. You got no oxygen ports and you got no gurneys. There's no point in bringing an EMS patient to you anyway, because they're going to be in the ambulance. They're going to get better resources in the ambulance, So, I mean, it's just a case of getting that information out as soon as possible. But I'm not sure it's climbing out, and it may want to look at it a little bit more. I'll do whatever
for Ontario County.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So in Ontario County, the EMS coordinator and myself receive an email from Department of Health. And that happens, it's an automatic generated thing when the hospital administrator goes and signs in with a password and notifies the state that they've met the criteria to go on diversion. It is blasted out. I don't know who all gets it besides all the counties in the state. And then our 911 center, they make a general announcement. And granted, right now, we're not tone activating all agencies like with a county all call. That's usually reserved for severe weather things like a tornado approaching, or we need somebody to assemble to make a movement on something. But certainly in our county, we can do better and send out this diversion to all the agencies in our county, if that would help our providers.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Perhaps additional, conversation in the future, but I do feel we may have some opportunity to have better communication with the individual agencies. I'm not sure if we're going to get that answer today. Clifton Springs Hospital. Dr. Cullinan still on? He must have jumped off.
He is still on. He's probably away from his computer.
Okay, I'll go ahead. We also had some changeover in nursing leadership. So the structure of both of our hospitals, there's a director of critical care and emergency services. That role is currently filled by an interim director, Brian Milozewski. A tremendous amount of experience at New York Presbyterian Bellevue, so brings enormous skills to the organization. And then we also have a manager of both emergency departments, also an interim position at this time, Anthony Castillo. So we do have our nursing leadership full right now and are recruiting for permanent positions. As most of you are aware, elective surgeries have started up, which will stress capacity, labor capacity. Some of those nurses that had come from the OR and the ambulatory surgery center have now been redeployed back to their service lines, which will affect both the emergency department and the inpatient units. With elective surgeries, I'm sure that we will have capacity issues spill over into the emergency departments. As Dr. Osborne mentioned, there are a large number of long-term care patients in the hospital with nowhere to go that don't need to be in the acute care hospital. And then with the reopening of elective procedures, some of those requiring short stay hospitalization will continue to put capacity issues on the emergency departments. But I have not much else. Newark Wayne Hospital.
I don't see anybody from Newark.
Okay. Is there any old business? There's none. The new business, what was the advisory on the agenda, John?
That was the King advisory that we were talking about.
Yeah. And then Dr. Glick, was that was yourself and Al, correct?
Yes, I think we've covered all new business.
Okay, any additional discussion? Well, thanks everyone for joining. I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So the next meeting should be back in Ontario County Safety Training Center on May 17th.
Much better. Thanks, John. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.